Marco Marialini, an Italian by origin, had an obsessive fixation. In his opinion, the ideal weight for a woman should be 33 kilograms, 72.7 pounds. This unhealthy obsession transformed this seemingly respectable antique shop owner into a real monster. Marialini was born on April 13, 1959, in the small Italian city of Brescia. His father was a simple construction worker, and his mother dedicated herself to housekeeping. The woman suffered from some form of obsessive-compulsive disorder, manifesting in an excessive desire for cleanliness and order. Every item in the house had its clearly defined place, and the slightest mess could drive her to a nervous breakdown. When the Marialini couple, who were already raising a 2-year-old daughter, had a son named Marco, his mother completely lost the ability to maintain perfect order. She began to suffer from frequent hysterics but never sought medical help, as she didn't even suspect she had any mental issues. A month after little Marco was born, he was sent to live with his paternal grandparents. He stayed there for 2 years, and then his parents took him back, believing their life was back on track and all difficulties were behind them. The mother started taking care of her son, but Marco was not easy to handle. He constantly misbehaved, disobeyed, threw tantrums. The mother desperately tried to calm him down, and when it didn't work, she raised her hand against her son. The boy's father sometimes tried to intervene, but the mother silenced him too. Marco's father was a calm, submissive man who didn't dare argue with his domineering wife so as not to irritate her further. He endured and kept silent. Once, a terrible incident occurred in the Marialini family. The mother once again could not pacify Marco, who was throwing a tantrum for no reason. Then she grabbed him and threw him out the open window. The boy fell several floors and miraculously caught onto a clothesline. This saved his life. As Marco grew up, he developed a slight excess weight. He didn't go on diets or try to lose weight but felt uncomfortable in his chubby body. In his teens, the young man began to pay attention to girls. Even then, he singled out from his environment, whether at school or in groups, particularly slender figures. Even while in prison, Marco felt an attraction only to very thin women. In his head, a delusional idea formed that the ideal weight for a girl should be 33 kilograms. Once he confessed to a friend that any woman who weighs even slightly more disgusts him. Moreover, Marco wanted his chosen one to have the same strong sex drive as he did. Finding such an ideal partner turned out to be very difficult. Most girls seemed to him either too plump or not passionate enough. It was because of these inflated requirements that Marco couldn't find a partner for a long time and remained a virgin until the age of 19, until he met Lucia. Marco and Lucia met in 1978. The girl was short and weighed 45 kilograms. The young man fell in love with the petite Lucia and craved intimacy with her. But when she undressed in front of him for the first time, Marco immediately declared he was disappointed with her figure. He expected Lucia to be even slimmer under her clothes. However, this did not stop him from continuing the relationship with the girl, who was quiet, modest, and calm. Meanwhile, Marco continued to look around, searching for his ideal. A few months after starting a romance with Lucia, Marco was drafted into the army. He served in the city of Pisa. The young man hoped that in a new place it would be easier for him to find a new love, so he stopped communicating with Lucia. However, a couple of months later, when the girl found another admirer, Marco realized he did not want to lose her. He resumed the relationship and even proposed to Lucia. Later, Marialini admitted he decided to get married only because his chosen one had a weak character. He was confident he could completely mold his wife to his liking. The couple's wedding took place in 1980. Immediately after the marriage, Marco set about re-educating his wife's figure. He believed 45 kilograms was far too much for a woman. Lucia obediently agreed to go on a diet. Marco began to severely restrict her food intake and regularly weighed her. If the number decreased, the man praised Lucia and assured her of his love. But if the weight increased even slightly, Marco became unbearably cruel. After a few months of grueling dieting, Lucia reached the desired 33 kilograms. Marco was over the moon with happiness. But soon the unthinkable happened. At such a critically low weight, Lucia became pregnant. Marialini was forced to come to terms with the situation and allowed his wife to eat to her heart's content. He understood that now the woman could not be restricted in her nutrition. Lucia's body began to change rapidly, and her belly grew. Marco was extremely dissatisfied with such metamorphoses. The marital bed was practically empty. During this period, Marialini began to have erotic dreams featuring incredibly thin, skeletal, naked women. Through their translucent skin, one could see every vein and even arteries. Marco's most cherished desire was to see his beloved spine through her belly. He understood this was physically impossible but could do nothing about his obsession. In the last months of Lucia's pregnancy, Marco began actively meeting and dating other girls. This time, he deliberately sought out not just slim women, but those suffering from anorexia. However, very soon Marialini became disillusioned with his choice. In his opinion, anorexic girls had an extremely unpleasant character. And most importantly, they had no desire for intimacy. Moreover, these girls independently decided when and what to eat. For Marco, it was fundamentally important that he completely controlled his chosen one's nutrition. He dreamed that women would lose weight solely for him. Lucia first gave birth to a daughter in 1981, and a year later, the couple had another child. During this time, the woman managed to gain a lot of excess weight. Marco became even more distant from his wife, whose body after childbirth evoked only disgust in him. The man and woman no longer slept together. Marco once again forced Lucia to go on a strict diet. Although, sometimes Marialini's mind seemed to clear, and he understood the abnormality of his behavior. So that his children would not lose their mother, Marco finally decided on a divorce. The couple's parting was quiet and peaceful, without unnecessary scandals. But Marco was not going to give up his obsession, so he continued his search for a new life partner. This turned out to be not so simple, as the search for the perfect woman stretched out for almost a whole decade. During this time, Marialini managed to open his own antique store in his native Brescia and even gained some popularity among the townspeople. It was then, in 1994, that dating through newspaper ads began to gain popularity in Italy. 35-year-old Marco placed a short message in a local publication stating that he was looking for a very thin woman without anorexia, aged 18 to 50. 21 women responded to his ad. Marialini invited 13 candidates on a date, of which the student Monica impressed him the most. Monica Colo was 25, which made her exactly a decade younger than Marco. The girl was originally from Sicily and studied speech therapy at university. With a height of 172 centimeters, she weighed only 45 kilograms. Monica was cheerful and sociable but lacked self-confidence at the same time. The girl was intrigued by Marco's unusual ad, so she decided to respond to it. A relationship started between Monica and Marco. They began to regularly meet and spend time together. The girl did not take this romance too seriously, but the man, on the contrary, wanted more. He persuaded Monica to move in with him, but she refused. Then Marco began to put psychological pressure on her, manipulating the girl's feelings. Eventually, Monica gave in and moved in with Marialini. It was then that Marco started having problems with his business. The antique shop became unprofitable, and the man got into debt. Monica helped him financially by lending him 76 million lire, money she earned from selling her own house. At that time, the amount was considerable, as the average salary in Italy was about 2 million lire. Marco proposed to Monica, but she refused. At first, they lived like an ordinary couple, but very soon, the man demanded that the girl go on a diet. He understood that with a height of 172 centimeters, Monica could never lose weight to the desired 33 kilograms. Therefore, Marialini set another goal for her, 38 kilograms. The girl reluctantly agreed to her partner's conditions, although Marco himself still dreamed of the magic number 33 deep down. It remains a mystery why he became so attached to this particular number, but perhaps it's very banal. Christ lived for that many years. Monica was on a strict diet set by Marco. The girl was allowed to eat only once a day, and usually, her meal consisted of a green salad or a few vegetables. Marialini carefully controlled the amount of food in the house. He even made special marks on cereal boxes to immediately notice if Monica decided to snack behind his back. The man weighed his partner several times a day and flew into a rage if the dial showed even a significant plus. In such cases, Marco forced the girl to induce vomiting and sometimes even raised his hand against her as punishment. However, on weekends, the couple often dined at a restaurant. There, Marco allowed himself to eat full meals. He ordered a first course, a second course, and did not even deny himself dessert. Monica, regardless of the occasion or holiday, could only choose between two options: a vegetable salad without dressing or green tea without sugar. After just a couple of months of such a strict diet, the girl reached the figure on the scales that Marco had dreamed of. However, after that, there began constant swings of body weight either to 39 or 40 kilograms. If in the morning the scales showed the number 3 in front, Marialini generously praised Monica, but if the arrow stopped at 4 at least once, the man immediately flew into a rage. Monica didn't tell anyone about her dietary restrictions, neither her parents nor her friends. When the girl noticeably lost weight, her loved ones began to worry about her health, but to all questions, Monica gave evasive answers, changed the subject, and then completely withdrew into herself. She almost stopped communicating with friends and didn't answer phone calls, just to avoid unpleasant interrogations. Over time, the girl's well-being steadily deteriorated. She constantly felt weak and didn't have the strength to even get out of bed. Monica's menstruation disappeared, and hunger became her constant companion. Thoughts of food never left her for a moment. Eventually, the girl began to secretly steal food. She greedily devoured inconspicuous tiny crackers, the number of which Marco never checked, and once even ate an onion, raw and bitter. When the owner noticed the disappearance of food, Monica had a hard time. The man brutally punished her with beatings, humiliated her, forced her to be and sometimes made her sleep on the bare floor. After 2 years of such a toxic cohabitation, the girl was so exhausted that she didn't always realize what was happening to her. However, sometimes her mind cleared, and in one of those moments, Monica firmly decided she had to escape from Marialini's house. The girl told her tormentor that she wanted to break up with him and return to her parents. To this, Marco replied with a terrifying threat: he would let Monica go only when she killed him, and if the girl dared to run away, he would cruelly take revenge on her. In the spring of 1996, Marco and Monica went to a restaurant. The man ordered a tasty and hearty pasta gnocchi, potato dumplings with flour and egg, served with cheese, mushrooms, and herbs. Monica, as always, asked for only a vegetable salad without oil and spices. When the waiter took the order, the couple began to wait for their dishes. At some point, Marco announced that he needed to go to the restroom and left Monica at the table. Soon the waiter brought the food, and then something incredible happened. The girl staged a real rebellion. She took Marco's plate with appetizing gnocchi and began to greedily shove them into her mouth. Even despite the terrible pain in her stomach, which had completely lost the habit of such generous portions, Monica could not stop. When Marco returned and saw what his companion was doing, he went berserk. The man forcibly snatched the plate from her hands and barked at Monica to calm down immediately. But the girl could no longer be stopped. She rushed to the restaurant kitchen. Monica burst into the realm of cooks and waiters, grabbed the first plate of ready-made food, and began to stuff the food into her mouth with her hands. Marco caught up with the mad woman right in the kitchen and forcibly led her to their table. The man yelled at Monica, and when they sat down at the table, he slapped her on the cheek with all his heart. The establishment's employees and visitors watched this strange performance in shock, not daring to intervene or even comment loudly on what they saw. Returning home, Marco decided to punish Monica for her restaurant antics. He forced the girl to undress and sleep on the cold floor. And he went to the bedroom, where he quickly fell asleep in a warm bed. However, Monica was not going to give up so easily. She took a heavy hammer, crept up to Marco, and hit him on the head, then rushed to escape from the house. When Marco regained consciousness a few hours later, he felt a severe headache. Next to him lay a hammer, the pillow was bloody, and Monica was nowhere to be seen. The man ran to the neighbors and asked them to call an ambulance. The medics hospitalized Marialini, but he got off with only a slight fright, so he was discharged from the hospital quite quickly. Meanwhile, the police found the fugitive Monica. The girl was arrested and taken into custody. During the interrogation, Marco stood up for his partner. He sincerely told the investigators how cruelly he treated Monica, forcing her to starve and controlling her every step. "I'm not offended by her at all. We just had a little misunderstanding, but we will definitely work it out," Marialini stated in court. As a result, Monica was found guilty but sentenced not to imprisonment, but only to 2 years of house arrest. The girl went to serve her sentence in her hometown of Domodossola, located 200 kilometers from Brescia, where Marco lived. For 2 years, Monica had to stay within her own grounds, but she was not forbidden to communicate by phone. The girl never once tried to contact her tormentor, but Marco called her with stunning regularity. At first, he was surprisingly amiable, inquiring about Monica's affairs, her well-being, and the books she read. But later, calls from Marialini began to come too often. In one of the conversations, the man confessed that he missed his beloved terribly and begged her for a meeting. Monica politely but firmly refused Marco. However, he did not calm down and continued to insist. In the end, he found his last and most important, as it seemed to him, argument. Marialini threatened to commit suicide if Monica did not agree to a date. Unfortunately, the girl did not have the emotional strength to end this sick relationship once and for all. "Okay, I will meet with you as soon as my house arrest is over," she replied to her former torturer. While Monica was serving her sentence, Marco devoted his time to creativity. In 1997, the man wrote and published his first book, which he called The Anorexia Hunter. Marialini designed the initial cover for the publication himself. It featured an extremely muscular man holding a thin, fragile woman over his head. Marco borrowed these images from the American cartoon Popeye the Sailor. However, the publisher forbade him from using borrowed pictures without the permission of the copyright holders. Therefore, the book was published with a different cover. Marialini did not hide at all that he had written an autobiographical novel that recreates the events of his own life. The man sincerely confessed that from childhood he suffered from a lack of love and care, felt lonely and neglected. He said that he hated his mother, although sometimes tender filial feelings for her awakened in his heart. Marco spoke of his father as a weak and spineless man. In the Marialini family, the authoritarian mother always ruled. Marco did not overlook the story of his married life with Lucia. However, he decided to hide his ex-wife's real name under a fictitious pseudonym, for her safety. But Monica appears in Marialini's book under the name Barbara. The man described all the intricacies of their relationship in detail and frankly, strict diets, total control, and unlimited power over the girl. However, in the book version of events, the ending is somewhat different from reality. On the last pages, the author kills the heroine named Barbara. During the presentation of the autobiographical novel, Marco publicly characterized himself as a monster that needs to be stopped. This pompous tone did not please one literary critic present at the press conference at all. After reading Marialini's book, the reviewer hurried to the police station to report his suspicions. However, law enforcement officers did not attach any importance to his statement, as they perceived the murder of Barbara purely as an artistic fiction. And there were no formal grounds for accusing Marco at that time. He had no offenses on record. At the time of the publication of the scandalous autobiography, Marialini's former partner had another year of house arrest left. Marco even sent Monica an author's copy of the book. On the flyleaf, the man made an intriguing inscription, "To Monica, with love and hate." Marialini continued to call the girl, and she even recorded their conversations on a dictaphone. Monica was sincerely worried about Marco's mental state. Time and again, she persistently advised him to seek help from a specialist. Marialini heeded this advice and finally visited a psychotherapist's office. He sincerely told the doctor about his painful fantasies and manic desires. The man laid out the whole truth about his life before the psychotherapist, without hiding a single detail. After that, Marco was hospitalized in a psychiatric hospital for several weeks. However, the course of treatment did not yield the desired results. When the patient was discharged home, he had already managed to become disillusioned with traditional medicine. Marialini no longer believed that pills could help him. In 1998, the term of house arrest assigned to Monica Colorado finally ended. The 29-year-old girl gained the right to travel freely around Italy. Marco continued to call the girl off the hook, begging for a meeting. At first, Monica refused, but later realized that the annoying admirer would not leave her alone so easily. Eventually, the girl agreed to a date but put forward her own conditions. The meeting should take place during the day in a crowded place. On July 14, 1998, Marco and Monica met in the town of Verbania, on the coast of the famous Lake Maggiore. The conversation took place on a small beach where young couples were swimming and sunbathing. After a short negotiation, Marialini began to insist that the girl return to him and resume their relationship. Monica categorically refused. In response, Marco began to blackmail her and threaten her with physical violence. All this time, the former partners did not get up from the sand, continuing to sit on the shore. Suddenly Monica jumped up and ran away. However, the enraged Marco quickly caught up with her and threw her to the ground. The frightened girl screamed loudly, begging for help. Then Marialini covered his victim's mouth with his palm. Shocked passers-by already began to gather around, but none of the eyewitnesses dared to intervene in the conflict. The frenzied Marco pulled out a knife and inflicted 22 wounds on various parts of Monica's body. The girl died on the spot from her injuries. One of the witnesses to the tragedy called the police. Before the arrival of the ambulance and law enforcement officers at the crime scene, Marco managed to swim far from the shore. The officers had to chase the suspect in a rescue boat. Marialini was arrested and handcuffed right in the middle of the lake. During the interrogation, the man admitted his guilt. However, he claimed that he did not plan to kill his beloved girl. Marialini was sure that he would be able to charm Monica during the date, and she herself would want to return to him. As an alternative, Marco considered kidnapping his former passion. In his car, parked near the ill-fated beach, the police found ropes, chains, knives, locks, and tape. But in the end, all the maniac's plans were thwarted, feelings took precedence over reason, and he committed a terrible crime. Marialini denied his intention to flee the scene. According to his version, he entered the lake with the aim of committing suicide but never dared to do it. During a search of Marco's dwelling, investigators seized strange drawings that outwardly resembled comics. On each sheet, the insane author depicted himself in the form of a huge ball, while his beloved next to him resembled a thin line. In his clumsy creations, Marialini mocked and humiliated women. In 2001, while the investigation into the resonant case was ongoing, 42-year-old Marco gave a big interview to journalists. The man appeared at the meeting with the pen sharks in a strange image that he had designed himself. Marialini shaved only the right half of his face, and left the left unshaven. According to him, this was supposed to symbolize the eternal duality of human nature. Whether we want it or not, every person has a light and a dark side, the killer remarked philosophically during the interview. By the way, when communicating with media representatives, Marco did not even try to repent of what he had done. Instead, he pompously declared that he saw no other way to solve the problem, and therefore used the only possible course of action. At the same time, in conversation, Marialini repeatedly emphasized that he posed a considerable danger to the community. A psychiatric examination found Marco sane and guilty of premeditated murder. The court sentenced him to 30 years in prison. Behind bars, the prisoner behaved extremely strangely. Marialini declared a hunger strike, took laxatives, and in a short time lost weight to 44 kilograms. However, very quickly the maniac changed his mind about starving himself and regained his lost weight. In addition, Marco constantly created problems for the administration of the correctional institution. He started fires in his cell and harmed the guards. For this, he was repeatedly transferred to other prisons. While in detention, Marialini wrote several letters in which he begged not to release him early. Marco claimed that once at large, he would certainly commit a new murder. However, later the man denied this information and for some time did not make such threats. But then he started again and repeated the same warnings. The fate of the serial killer inspired Italian director Matteo Garrone to create a thriller. In 2004, the director shot and presented to the public a low-budget film, First Love, which, however, did not win high awards and remained almost unnoticed by critics. In 2021, the management of the correctional institution considered Marialini's application for parole. However, instead of the coveted freedom, the man ended up in a psychiatric hospital. In the same year, Marco was visited by a film crew from one of the TV channels. The journalists wanted to talk to the 62-year-old maniac. However, he stated that he no longer wished to recall his bloody love story. What was in the past is long gone. Now I have forgotten everything, Marialini replied to the cameraman. Media representatives who managed to talk to Marco noticed striking changes in his behavior. The maniac no longer resembled a monster, but rather reminded them of a lost and confused old man. The man was poorly oriented in space, often hung up, and left even the simplest questions unanswered. Obviously, such a striking metamorphosis was caused by the prolonged intake of potent psychotropic drugs. In the spring of 2024, after 3 years of careful observation of the patient, doctors will have to make a final decision on the future fate of Marco Marialini. There is a minuscule chance that the maniac will be released. But most likely, he is destined to remain forever behind the walls of a psychiatric hospital. Thank you for watching this story. Write your thoughts about it in the comments. Don't miss the future videos, subscribe and like the channel. Take care of yourself and people you love.